Welcome back to the Cleveland Baseball Talk podcast. I'm Joe Noga, joined by Paul Hoynes. Hoynesy, we keep getting so close. All this time, 44 years since Len Barker's perfect game in Cleveland, and Gavin Williams on Wednesday gave us all hope that we were going to see a Cleveland no-hitter, but it wasn't to be. Gavin Williams pitched his heart out in New York at Citi Field. The Guardians win 4-1, but Williams takes a no-hitter into the ninth inning and loses it with one out on a Juan Soto solo blast. Hoynesy, I'm okay. I've seen enough of these no-hitters go deep in games and they lose them, but did it have to be Juan Soto?
That's the guy, Joe. I mean, not only does he send the Guardians home last year with the Yankees, he returns to haunt them in a new uniform with a new contract in the ninth inning and ruins a career moment for Gavin Williams. Gavin said he left the fastball up a little too high, and Soto, we all know what Soto does to fastballs up in the zone. I loved what Austin Hedges said. He goes, unfortunately, I've been behind the plate too many times for his home runs. I know what they sound like when they leave the bat.
Yeah, and it was no doubter once you saw the replay of how high it hit up on the wall. Originally watching it, live and, first glance at it, I thought, oh no, Angel Martinez got burned in center field. But this ball was well above the yellow line on the wall. He would have needed a garden shovel to catch that one. It was out of the ballpark, and that's sort of a little more reassuring. But nonetheless, for Gavin Williams, this has been building all season, really, with Gavin. He started off a little rocky, a little unsure, and then really got into the lab, got into the office, and sort of tinkered with some of his mechanics and added some pitches, which you don't really see starting pitchers do. But that's gotten us to the point where we are with him right now, where he's getting deep into games, and this is a common occurrence that he's dominating some of these lineups, and the Mets lineup is a heck of a lineup to dominate.
Yeah, he did a great job, Joe. And this has been building, like you said. Soto's home run ended a streak of 16 scoreless innings for this guy, and he is regularly getting into the sixth inning. In his last 10, 12 starts, he's really taken over, and today and yesterday's game, I really think swung in the second inning, Joe. He wasn't feeling it. You could tell he was struggling with his command. He walked two guys. He threw a wild pitch. Finally, Carl Willis came out. Then Austin Hedges, the catcher, came out and talked to him, and it sounded like he read him the riot act a little bit. He said his body language was bad. His body language was not what it should be and what it had been in previous starts. And he said, you got to get it together. And Gavin Williams listened and got it together.
Yeah, that was a heck of a response from Gavin Williams going out there. Not terribly too many strikeouts. What did he have? 6 strikeouts
Yeah,
in
only
the game?
6 strikeouts, yeah.
Really relied on his defense. I thought maybe the first batter of the game was it Lindor, who took his glove off with a line drive up the middle. You need a couple of those kind of plays to flirt with a no-hitter the way that Williams did. But then in the 7th inning, C.J. Kayfus, the rookie, I think he's up in his 4th game or 5th game or something like that in the big leagues. He comes out there and makes a diving catch on a pop, I think Mark Vientos.
Yeah,
To right field.
Line drive, yeah.
Line drive to right field, and Kayfus comes out there, and that was the moment where I was like, oh man, I better get things in gear from a coverage standpoint because this thing is really happening.
Yeah, I talked to Kafis after the game, and he said, as soon as I saw that ball, I told myself, that ball is not hitting the ground. He was diving all the way for that one. And this is a guy, Joe, what? Like you said, he's been up in the big leagues like 5 games. He's made like 2 starts in right field, 2 or 3 starts in right field. He's a converted first baseman. And when something like that happens, Joe, then the old AP the ticker bell starts going off, and ding, 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 no hitter, no hitter.
Well, now in your time covering this team, this is the 3rd time a pitcher has gone into the 9th inning with a no hitter and lost the bid. You got to go back to Carlos Carrasco in 2015, the last time it happened, and Carlos was 1 strike away from a no hitter there. And before that, John Farrell in 1989, same thing against the Kansas
Orioles.
City Royals at home at Old Municipal Stadium, and I believe it was Willie Wilson reaching on an error and Kevin Seitzer an RBI single in that game that broke up the no hitter. But I want to mention two instances of that I wrote about this morning. Burt Blyleven in 1981. You go back all these times that since Len Barker's perfect game, that there have been sort of just circumstances conspire to sort of take this away from Cleveland and Cleveland fans. Blyleven's throwing a no hitter in the ninth inning, and Larry Littleton replaces Joe Charbonneau. Joe was injury prone and whatnot during his career, but they put Larry Littleton out in left field, and the first batter of the ninth inning, Lloyd Mosby, hits one up in the lights, and Littleton loses the ball in the lights, goes for a double, and Blyleven, that had to kill Blyleven for that to happen.
Bert is still grousing about that one. And I remember watching
100%.
that on TV, Joe. I think it was that old exhibition stadium, where the wind was howling out to right field, and it was always seemed to be raining there whenever the Guardians played. I don't know if or the Indians played out there, but yeah, I remember watching that on TV, and I could imagine just knowing Blyleven, getting to know him after that, what he may have said in the locker room after the game.
It was certainly colorful. I'm sure of that. The only other one I want to mention, go back to 1942, Al Milner against Detroit. I thought this was crazy. Al Milner pitched 14 scoreless innings, losing the no-hitter in the ninth against the Tigers on a single by Doc Kramer. He went on to pitch 5 more innings after giving up that single, 5 more scoreless innings. The game ended in a scoreless tie because they couldn't turn the lights on at the stadium due to league rules at the time that said if you start a game with the lights off, they have to stay off until that game ends, which I think is kind of weird. But it was the first game of a doubleheader that day, so they were waiting to play the next game under the lights in the nightcaps. The stat line from that one, Al Milner walked 4 and did not strike out a batter in the game, ended in a 0-0 tie. Just, I thought that was insane in doing the research.
He pitched to contact, Joe.
Yeah.
I remember talking to Carrasco after that game. He's got 2 strikes on Joey Butler, and he kind of took a pause before throwing that fateful last pitch. And he goes, I asked him, what were you thinking about? And he goes, I was thinking about how I was going to celebrate after the no hitter. And Butler lines the ball over Jason Kipnis's head in the right field. Just a heartbreaker.
Yeah, if Jason Kipnis were 6'1" instead of 5'10", we're talking about rewriting history at that point. But it was not to be, just like it wasn't to be for Gavin Williams. But like you said, he sort of took it in stride, sort of the typical way we expect. Gavin, to me, is the ultimate water off a duck's back kind of pitcher. Bad outing, good outing. He sort of has that sort of even keel. But it was great to see the Mets fans really recognize the effort that he gave as he was coming off the field.
Yeah, they gave him a standing ovation. There was a lot of Cleveland fans, Guardians fans in the stands as well, but the whole stadium, kind of gave him an ovation. It was a standing O. It was a good thing to see that. Good baseball fans appreciate a great effort, and that certainly was by Gavin. What, 126 pitches? He had 111, Joe, after 8 innings, and
Hmm.
usually, with Stephen Vogt, that's a no-no. You're not going back out. Vogt said he liked, the velocity was still there. Gavin Williams' pitches were still crisp, and they had the 4-0 lead. And he said, well, you've got to let him go then.
Yeah, big home runs by Angel Martinez, David Fry in that game sort of gave them the cushion and the comfort to be able to send him out there to do what he did. And we saw in the eighth inning out of Gavin Williams the curveball. He had the curveball going yesterday. It was on point. He was painting corners with the curveball, and not something that we often see, but he really did. That was special yesterday what he was doing with his curveball. So just a lot of credit goes to Gavin Williams for what he was able to do. I think before we move on, Hoynesy, I got the question now. it still remains. It's still out there. You've been covering this team for a long time. Still have yet to see a Cleveland pitcher throw a no hitter. When's it going to happen? Who's it going to be? Is it going to happen? We thought Shane Bieber for the longest time. We thought for sure he was going to be the guy. There have been other pitchers who have had dominant stuff come through since then. Does Gavin have no hit stuff?
Yeah, I would think, it seems like no hitters come out of nowhere, Joe. I mean, you don't have to be the best pitcher on the team to throw one. You have to be the best pitcher on the team that day, that particular day. And the environment has to be right. You have to get an early lead, it seems like. And it just, Lenny Barker wasn't the greatest pitcher in Indians history, but on that night against Toronto, he'll tell you to this day that the curveball, the slider that he was throwing to the Blue Jays, he never had it again. He could never find that pitch again that was working that well that night. And it's just, it's a lightning strike. It really is. I've seen no hitters pitched against Cleveland. Have never seen one by a Cleveland pitcher yet.
The funny thing is, yesterday there was an event, like a season ticket holder type event at the ballpark at Progressive Field, and I had a buddy who was actually there taking batting practice on the field, and Lenny Barker was there in uniform as part of the fan experience. They did the whole, they got the uniforms in the clubhouse and everything, and they went out on the field. They're taking batting practice and shagging fly balls, and then the game starts to get interesting. And Lenny Barker is there watching it on the big screen as Gavin Williams basically goes to try and become the next Cleveland pitcher to throw a no hitter. How cool would it have been to be standing next to Lenny Barker watching it on the big screen as Gavin Williams throws a no hitter? All these things we were robbed of because of Juan Soto. I goes back to nightmares from October, but we have to move on. Hoynesy, we have to move on, and the Guardians have moved on. I can tell you the Guardians have moved on since July 7th because they've cut 9.5 games off of Detroit's lead. All of the Gavin Williams no-hitter stuff it's all nice and it's window dressing because right now this team is cooking. This team is confident. This team is playing guards ball again, and it's been what they've needed. 9.5 games off the lead. They're 6 out in the division. First time they've been 4 games over 500 since June 8th. They're 19-7 in their last 26 games. Hoynesy, what are they doing right?
They've been fortunate to hit the right part of the schedule, and they're playing their best baseball at this time, but you still got to win these games. They're getting they're getting clutch hitting. They're getting just great starting pitching. I think the starting pitching has been the key to it. Guys like Ciccone, Logan Allen, Gavin Williams, Tanner Bybee, all these guys, even Joey Cantillo have been really solid. And that bullpen is reorganized after the paid leave of Emmanuel Clase. So they've been coming together and they've been playing great defense. But I think that the key to me, Joe, has been the pitching.
Yeah, the starters in that last series from the series sweep against the Mets, they were 1-0 with a 2.28 ERA. The bullpen goes 2-0, gets 2 saves, 3.24 ERA. But if you look back just over the last month, the last 26 games, the starters and the bullpen together have been really the difference and the storyline of this season right now so far. First sweep in New York, in the city of New York, since 2017, when they took 3 games in a row from the Yankees during that historic 22-game win streak in 2017. It's the first ever sweep in Citi Field for the Guardians, who were pretty used to getting swept in Citi Field prior to this. They hadn't won a game in that ballpark. So really, the turnaround has been remarkable. They're 6 games back in the division, but only a game and a half behind the Yankees for the third wild card spot. Hoynesy, this team just became relevant again after a 10-game losing streak in a month of sort of soul searching and playing their butts off. The Guardians are relevant again.
Yeah, no doubt about it. They're right back in it, and they're hungry, Joe. I mean, Austin Hedges, basically said what you said earlier. He goes, okay, Gavin Williams had a great game, but we're here to win. We're here to make the playoffs. That's the most important thing we accomplished today, and so we move on, and Stephen Vogt is preaching the same message. You got and you think about that middle game of that series, Joe, against the Mets. They had used their top leverage relievers in the first game to win that game in what extra innings, and they come back. Most of their guys, their leverage guys are down, so you've got to go to Colby Allard, who gives you one and a third. You've got to go to Nick Enright.
Jacob Junis.
Jacob Junis. So you go to the second level relievers, and they still win the game. This is a team that believes. And Colby Allard said after the game, Stephen Vogt has done a great job. He's brought this locker room together, and he's made us believe that we can do this.
Has the Emmanuel Clase, Luis Ortiz ordeal or the specter of that sort of maybe, not necessarily bonded this team, but sort of given them a rallying point to go from for the remainder of the season and been the impetus for this turnaround?
Yeah, definitely, Joe. I think it was, and I think we saw that by the club cleaning out those guys' lockers. I think that was more that was not by accident. That was something that said these guys are okay. We've these are the 26 guys we've got. These two guys might not be coming back. The odds are they won't be coming back. We've got to move on and get our act together and take just one game at a time and try to get to the postseason.
I mean, that's some next level managing. If you can take a blow like, the reliever of the year, a three-time All-Star, and a starter who had given you innings all year, and you excise them from the clubhouse, and you turn that into a positive, something that you can use to motivate your guys, to bring them together, and to get them playing their best baseball at the most important time of the year. That is Major League Managing 2.1. I mean, that's pretty advanced stuff for Stephen Vogt. Very impressive. All right, last thing I want to talk about today. Major League Baseball calling up its first female umpire. Jen Powell will work the bases in the doubleheader games on Saturday between the Marlins and Braves. And then she will be behind the plate on Sunday for the Marlins and Braves series finale. This is the first female umpire to work Major League Baseball games. Pretty important stuff. Major League Baseball finally catching up with the rest of the world, I guess, and the rest of the sports world. I mean, it's been, 28 years since Violet Palmer became the first NBA referee, first female NBA referee. A decade since the NFL had female officials on the field, and I don't think hockey has any, but I know like big time soccer, like World Cup soccer, has had a female official work games. I think it's long overdue, and it'll be interesting to see how the reception for Jen Powell by the fans, by the league, by the players, and can't wait to see somebody argue balls and strike. Do you think it's a coincidence that the ABS system is coming and now Major League Baseball is a little more relaxed and saying, hey, let's go ahead and have a female umpire maybe behind the plate? I doubt that she will be immune to having her calls challenged at some point.
Yeah, that the game is made to challenge the decisions made by umpires, Joe. I mean, it happens every day, but it's not like the wild wild west like it used to be when Earl Weaver and all Billy Martin and all those traditional hardcore managers were working in the big leagues. I mean, now you don't see that many arguments just because of what you were saying. Replay kind of rules. And now if they bring the ABS system in next year, the challenge system, that takes another element out of the confrontation between managers, players, and umpires. So, good for her. You're right. It's a step in the right direction. That's a tough grind. That's a tough, tough job, a tough gig. But good for her. I hope, wish her all the success she can
Yeah,
have.
the Powell last year, it had been almost 20 some years since a female umpire had worked spring training games. Maria Cortezio in 2007 was the last female umpire to work spring training games, and so you could tell that they were making steps towards that it was going to be something that the league has sort of pushed for. But this is an experienced umpire. She's worked at the AA level in the Southern League, so it's not like she hasn't seen this. It's just the next level up. And there's going to be all sorts of learning curves and growing pains too. But just an important moment, I think, for Major League Baseball, because now you watch the NBA games now, and you don't even hardly notice that one or two of the officials on the crew is female. The only difference you see is one of them might have a ponytail. It's
Yeah.
really the only way you know. They're excellent, and there needs to be more of this. There needs to be more growth and more women and more representation at other levels. I know we've seen them. We've seen women in executive roles now. We've seen them in on-field coaching roles. It could be coming eventually that we see a female player in the major leagues, but that's probably a long ways off. So we'll look forward to seeing how Jen Powell does this weekend with the Marlins and the Braves. Hoynes, that's going to wrap up today's edition of the Cleveland Baseball Talk podcast. We'll be back at it tomorrow as the Guardians open a 3-game series in Chicago. We'll talk to you then.
Good deal, Joe.